Alrighty, welcome everybody and thank you for joining. We will begin the webinar and I'm just going to hand this over to Neil Costa, who's the founder and CEO of HireClix.
Thanks so much for your help, Rachel, and thanks everybody for joining us today. With me doing the Programmatic Advertising in 2021 webinar is Cori Lunnen from our Recruitment Advertising Operations team. As Rachel mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of HireClix. We're really glad to have you today and very excited to talk through how to leverage programmatic and give you some more background on programmatic and hopefully, load you up with tons of information and answer any questions that you might have. Rachel Cecilio from our marketing team, who you just heard at the very beginning, is manning the chat. So she's gonna, if you have any questions at all, feel free to pop them into the chat window in the Zoom interface at any point in time, and Rachel will help us navigate questions as we get closer to the end of the webinar. So thanks again for taking time out of your schedule. I'm sure the new year is busy, and we really appreciate you sharing a little bit of your time with us as you get things rolling in 2021. So just an overview. Programmatic has been around for about 5 years in the recruitment job advertising space, and really we've started to see the influence of programmatic on people's recruitment advertising budgets make a significant impact. And this is something that we've been involved in since it started in the job advertising space, recruitment advertising space, and certainly have some familiarity with it from the consumer marketing side. So that's really, again, we want you to walk away from this with a good understanding of it, understanding on the players, the landscape, some examples, and why you would use programmatic, and then as you think about ways to deploy it, maybe keeping us in mind for that. If you don't know HireClix, we are a recruitment marketing agency. We started the agency about 10 years ago. We're based in Gloucester, Massachusetts, which is just north of Boston. We have clients in every industry sector imaginable, and we're helping clients do their recruitment advertising campaigns across the US, and at this very moment in time, probably actively in about 35 different countries around the world. So we take care of that from our Global Center of Recruitment Marketing Excellence here in Gloucester. Again, the background is our team, I was over at Monster.com, there are several others at Monster.com, and our job at that time was to take Monster as a consumer brand and drive people back to the site in order to start their job search. And so what we thought there was an opportunity was to bring all that consumer marketing experience and work directly with the talent acquisition teams and recruiting teams to help them get the best possible ROI on their dollars. In addition to, our services are on the right. We typically act as an agency of record for our clients, focused on helping them with their entire recruitment advertising and marketing strategy, helping them buy tools and analyzing the campaigns and measuring the ROI and digging into the ATS data. We also offer our Programmatic Plus service, which is something that we're really excited about and see as a significant opportunity to help clients get the most out of their dollars. In addition to the advertising agency services, we also offer strategic consulting services. So we have former TA practitioners on our team, and we've been doing that for about 4.5, almost 5 years now. And the idea is that we can help solve TA problems beyond just advertising. So whether it's tech selection, recruitment process optimization, things along those lines. And then as an agency, we have an amazing creative team as well. So with that, I'll introduce Cori as well. Cori Lunnen, want to do a quick little bio on yourself?
Sure.
We're in the same room, that's why you see us looking left and right. Socially distanced, of course.
Hey everybody, Cori Lunnen. I've been with HireClix for just about 9 years at this point. So since the early days, and from the programmatic side of the house, I've been involved since the very beginning in recruitment advertising programmatic. So really helping clients to get the best ROI out of the channels that they're advertising with, helping to shape those strategies, and just work closely with our clients as an extension of their team. So excited to be here today and chat with all of you.
Very good. Thanks, Cori. Happy to have you here. As I said, my name is Neil Costa. I started HireClix in 2010 after I've been in the e-commerce space since the mid-90s, and then worked at Monster for several years as we tried to activate the Monster brand in the marketplace and help people, find the right opportunities and help them with their job search. So without further ado, we'll dig into the agenda here. So we want to get to the core of like, what is programmatic advertising? Help give you some perspective on the landscape. Again, one of the benefits of having us, in the industry and been around since the beginning of programmatic advertising, or programmatic job ads, I should say, is that we've been watching and understanding all the different nuances that are happening. So we'll go into that a little bit. We'll talk about defining success and what are the key performance indicators, as well as like how do you make sure you get an ROI on your dollars. Lastly, we'll go through a brief client case study where we were able to leverage programmatic and drive some really awesome results. And this is one of Cori's clients, so it's kind of exciting to have her here. And then we'll just talk about, what's coming and what's next in programmatic. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish today. And again, the most important thing in my perspective is that you have your questions answered. So whether you put them in the chat and we'll have Rachel go through those at the end, or whether it's something, if you need a follow-up conversation with myself or anyone on the HireClix team, we're happy to help. We are very much a teaching and educational organization first, and we want to make sure that you understand how this all works and kind of understand that before you make any buying decisions. So with that being said, what is programmatic? So Cori, you want to go through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So programmatic is really just an automated way of buying and selling online advertising. So it's essentially an opportunity for a technology to help advertisers get their ads placed to a targeted audience in a more efficient way. So there's essentially technology on the back end that helps with this process. And in the process of buying the ad inventory from publishers and websites to showcase those ads that the advertisers are looking to place. So really taking a lot of the manual processes out of the equation. So back in the day, placing insertion orders and manual contracts of buying inventory from websites has really gone away. And programmatic has allowed for technology to help with more of that automation.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to mention is that, in the past, we saw this big shift from, duration-based job postings where you paid $400 on Monster and you had a posting for 30 days to, this pay-per-click model and pay-per-apply model. So it's all performance marketing. And the consumer marketing world has gone through the same transformation. Now, what we're talking about, instead of agencies like us going in and doing manual bid changes from 50 cents a click to 75 cents a click, what we're able to do is, set up some rules. And because we know that we don't want to go over $22 a click or $5 a click. So we can actually be more precise with the boundaries that we're laying out by leveraging a programmatic platform. Now, some people might react to that and say like, well, I don't know, why do I need an agency then if this platform does that? Well, what we see we use these platforms, so we're not trying to put ourselves out of business. What we see, the opportunity we see is that we can spend more time analyzing the campaigns. We can spend more time with clients understanding their business. And that really is the crux of why programmatic is so beneficial, throughout online advertising, whether it's consumer advertising or whether it's for recruitment advertising. So, and just to give you some scale of what's happening, and is programmatic a phase or a fad, or is it something that's going to stick around? And again, we always look toward the consumer marketing world and what's happening there in order to be prepared for what's going to happen in recruitment advertising. I think based on my perspective and talking to others around the industry, we're typically anywhere between 5 and 7 years behind the trends that are happening in the consumer advertising world. And so in this particular case, what we're able to do is go out and find some statistics on what's projected to happen in 2021, according to emarketer.com, and the link's down in the slide at the bottom there. But basically, out of all the display advertising, and display advertising is different from job advertising, but the display ads are what you see on CNN and Weather and Fox News and ESPN. Those big kind of blocky, rectangular, square ads that are on any type of consumer site, that's display marketing. And right now, 86+% of those ads are bought programmatically. And so that's clearly a sign of a very mature consumer marketing channel. The other consumer marketing channels might be social, might be Google AdWords, might be YouTube, and clearly you have all the television, whether it's connected television or cable television, those things. But so in this one particular niche or part of consumer marketing, that 87% market share, almost 87% market share, is pretty significant. And then the next stat to the right is like, well, what does that mean as far as dollars go? So that's $82 billion in advertising through that display. So those little boxes and widgets around your websites are driving all those publishers $82 billion in revenue. It's kind of terrifying to think of in some ways, but that's really where the estimates are. And lastly, on the right hand side, like, is this, the question is like, well, that's great, but big markets often mature and slow down. Well, in this particular case, that $82 billion number is a 24% increase over what happened in 2020. And what's interesting in looking at the data when we went through it, from 19 to 20, the rate slowed a little bit, but it did not dip. So because people are at home, because people are spending more time, consuming media through their screens, advertising still did jump from a programmatic perspective. But in 2021, where we're all hoping for a recovery, we're seeing a projection of almost 25% more advertising dollars going through the programmatic ad channel. So a little bit on how programmatic works, and we'll probably kind of team up on this one here, and maybe Cori will play the role of the brand advertiser, and I'll play the role of the publisher supplier. Basically it's like anything else. It's like a stock market. There's demand and there's supply. So if I'm the publisher, if I'm weather.com and I have 1 million visitors a month, right, which is the little blue dude jumping out of the screen down there, you got 1 million of those people, visiting the site every day, really, in the case of weather.com. When we get to the site, we're going to be served up ads. So maybe in this particular case, you can see there's 3 ads on any particular page there. So I have 1 million visitors per day with 3 ads on just, if they only visit one page, that's 3 million ad units. So what I have as the publisher, as weather.com, is I have what's called a supply side platform. And just think of it as inventory management. I have 3 million units to fill today with advertising. And so some of that advertising I sell direct to Home Depot, or I sell to Chase, or Citibank, or whatever the case might be. And even with those vendors, sometimes we put that inventory into what's called an ad exchange. And so Cori, as the advertiser, has a different mission.
So as an advertiser, I want to target those users. So I want to understand how, or be able to show my ads, so those little kind of rectangles and squares, on site to the right user at the right time. So I'm going to go into a demand side platform, a DSP, to set those parameters and ultimately try to get my ads into the eyes in front of the right people. So leveraging the targeting capabilities, demographic data from those ad servers to be able to push those ads to the websites.
So if I have 3 million ad units available and Cori's looking to get in front of, 100,000 people and show them, 5 ads today, that means that she needs 500,000 of those 3 million ads on weather.com. And so what we both put, I put my 3 million ad openings, my impressions that are available, into the SSP. She puts her 500,000 impressions that she wants today into the DSP. I put what I'm willing to sell them at. You put what you're willing to buy them at, right? And basically that ad exchange uses all that data in a marketplace that is reconciling all of those demands. Clearly, Cori's not the only advertiser that wants to be on weather.com. So if there's 9 other advertisers, just keeping it safe, now keeping it all simple, there's 10 advertisers who all want the same amount of impressions. They have a combined demand of 5 million impressions, but I only have 3 million available. So this is where you can see the reconciliation of what she's willing to pay versus those other advertisers, and what I'm willing to offer up for inventory, and what price I want as a minimum. So I might say that, I'm willing to give, each of those ads a penny each. And Cori might say she's willing to pay 2 pennies, but the other advertisers are willing to pay, 1 penny. So that means that Cori, in the ad exchange, the reconciliation is going to happen that Cori is going to win her 500,000 impressions first. And so that's really all this is happening literally in milliseconds, right? So these systems are all baked in a way to work together. The SSP, the DSP communicates through the ad exchange, reconcile who the winner is, and then delivers the ads for those winners. And I on the back end get to set the prices, and I get to collect the revenue based on what gets served up. Now, for example, when you go into with the extra runoff elections in Georgia, right? When you have this massive amount of demand, all the publishers in Georgia, all the people that are making ads available, even weather.com has visitors from Georgia, they could raise their minimum prices really, really high in situations like that. And for us, the beginning of the year, January is the biggest job search month of the year. That's always been the case, January. And then, September is a huge job search month as well. So in this particular time, if you're finding, whether your ads are on Indeed or other job boards, that you're not getting as many impressions, well, there's something crazy happening. There's lots of additional job searches happening, but there's also many, many advertisers participating in that marketplace. So this is why, as we talk about it, we'll talk about how important it is to manage your campaigns, to understand the nuances of the marketplace. But hopefully that gives you, in an illustrative example, a better sense of how programmatic's working, all literally in a matter of seconds. So as we go into, programmatic and why do we do it? I think we touched on it a little bit, but Cori, why don't you bounce through some of these here? Yeah,
so on the recruitment advertising side of the house, there's definitely benefits of leveraging programmatic. Over time, there's been tons of job aggregators, job boards in the space that have popped up. For one of our clients, we use over 30 different boards in the US, and that's just directly through programmatic channels. So a big benefit of leveraging programmatic is scaling that job distribution. So figuring out how to, in a more automated fashion, get your jobs out to a larger set of job boards to get in front of a bigger audience, and ultimately to gain visibility for those high intent users. On job boards, we see that obviously job seekers are going there to search for jobs. So you want to capture those folks when they're searching, and being able to select the positions that should be sent to those specific publishers is a big benefit in programmatic, and being able to choose, maybe on Indeed, I want to be serving a certain management type role, whereas on Snag or ZipRecruiter, I want to be serving cooks or servers, kind of different roles that could be distributed to the various job boards in the space. And programmatic allows you to do that in a more systematic way and get those jobs out automatically to the different job boards.
Yeah, I think that, when a lot of people see job distribution, they think of tools like eQuest and kind of the old way of doing job distribution was to have a button in the ATS that everybody picks, like, I'm going to send it to this job board as you're building the job rec, and you get to pick which recs get sent to which job boards. That level of distribution via eQuest is really dated and something that we just don't see as practical in today's terms. What you have with this, scaling job distributions, let's grab all your jobs, let's send them out to the job boards. A lot of the job boards have free organic traffic because they want that content to deliver traffic. And then, like Indeed delivers a lot of organic traffic or free traffic, and then you can advertise to get additional exposure for your job. So the idea of like sending out jobs like one at a time, like torpedoes out to each individual job board is gone. Like we really want to take, how do we take everybody's jobs all at once and make them packageable to send out and make sure that the job boards ready to consume massive amounts of jobs. That's really been a big change in the last few years from the time that programmatic started.
Yeah.
I think on the other next one, controlling budgets. I think we have massive amounts of flexibility when it comes to controlling budgets, right? We can set them by region, by, go ahead.
I was going to say set them by publisher, region. Essentially in the back end of the platforms, we're able to really hone in on those priorities that we want to be focused on. So if we have a monthly budget or a weekly budget, we can tailor how we're setting those campaigns and the jobs to automatically stop being sent or sponsored to certain publishers so that we're not overspending and making sure that we're sticking to the budget that we're
and the kind of the magical part that the platform that we use brings to us is that we can set those budgets across multiple job boards too. Really, in the past, if we were managing a campaign in Indeed or on ZipRecruiter or Talroo or whatever it might be, that we were basically, we'd put a $500 budget or a $1,000 budget or a $10,000 budget, but it would just be contained to that one job board or that one media property. Now what we're able to do is really go, let's set a budget across many job boards. And so that allows us to have greater flexibility to manage a budget versus having to do it in a siloed manner. In addition to that, rules-based bidding, if you want to cover that.
Yeah, so where we have those specific campaigns set, we can include jobs and set priority levels. So trying to essentially group jobs by, maybe this is kind of a always on campaign. It's an evergreen position that always needs attention, where for certain roles we need to get better visibility, and maybe it's a more difficult to fill job, so we need to bid more aggressively. We can set those campaigns with rules and priority settings so that certain jobs get pulled into higher bid, to have higher bid rates to go out to the publishers, and ultimately balancing those priorities to avoid spending all of our budget on a housekeeper role or a janitor role.
Yeah, and just, the other side of the coin is that if we know that we have a certain geography, if we know we need, a certain number of nurse practitioners in a certain market, we can set those rules to be really aggressive up until we even hit an applicant volume. Okay, if we hit 150 applies, then we can shut this campaign off, or we could reduce the bid down. So it's really, it allows us to be more thoughtful in how we're planning out the client campaigns, and then set rules versus having to manually check in on all those campaigns. So, a lot of times we talk about it being like, an F-16 is a, really complicated, airplane to fly. But, we have to have the right kind of operator in there to make sure it does everything that you need it to do. So that's how we look at it ourselves. We want to leverage this technology. We want to be, really smart and build, actionable, leverage the actionable data that's in the platform. So that way we can make sure that we're getting the most for the client's dollars. And I think that the last part is that, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but like it gives us that much more time to understand the business. And I think that when you look at agency partners, it's one thing to do high volume commoditized roles, but it's another thing to have a partner that really gets your business and understands it. And then I think we believe that you have stronger results when a partner like that is sitting riding shotgun with you. So job ad networks, the reason why we're bringing this up here is that a lot of, originally when we started working with our partner, our programmatic partner is ClickCast, and that's run by Appcast. And Appcast was an ad network. And basically the way that we used, what's considered a job ad network. So we're posting to one partner, and they're going out to many, many sites and trying to find the best possible inventory. And so that, Appcast technology really turned into a product that we could end up using on our own. And I think that what we're seeing is that ad networks in general, going to one vendor and buying inventory on many, many sites is not a new concept. Way back when I was at Monster in the early 2000s, there was a website called advertising.com, and it was a advertising network that you could buy, just inventory on and put your bid out there. But the idea that it's now, there are job ad networks now that for our industry specifically that manage inventory and jobs on specific sites is really an incredible opportunity. And I think that, one of the things we're finding is that there's a little bit of confusion around like, well, is something a media property, which is a job ad network, or is it a programmatic platform? And so I guess the thing that we would want to leave you with here is that job ad networks are typically using programmatic technology in order to buy your inventory through a job ad network. So instead of just going to Monster or going to Indeed or going to AppCast and just buying, advertising inventory from some native property, you're buying an aggregated source of traffic. So if you went to appcast.com, there's not a big, what and where kind of box like you see on Indeed.
And just in terms of looking at programmatic as part of the larger recruitment marketing mix, I think it's become, as Neil said before, a big buzzword in the industry. And so everybody's kind of putting all of their eggs into that programmatic basket. But there are so many other pieces of the recruitment marketing mix that you need to keep in mind. So it's just one piece as part of a larger strategy. As it relates to talent acquisition.
Yeah, I think that what we're finding is that job boards are clearly a very good source of candidates. As Cori alluded to it earlier, that we talk about job boards in the sense that there's a higher level of intent that someone will complete and apply if they're on a job board versus if they are on weather.com and they see a job ad. Like, if I'm checking the weather, I'm not necessarily, I don't have my resume ready to go, or I don't have an account set up where I could send my resume in. So we do, as an agency, we leverage programmatic. It's really an important channel, but it's always good to remember there's a bigger world out there, and it's not just a one-stop shop for solving all your problems. Another thing that we wanted to make sure that you understood was just what's happening in the marketplace. As we mentioned, the programmatic job advertising movement probably started in 15 and 16 and got a little bit more momentum, but now I think that I'd probably say starting 12 or 18 months ago, we hear programmatic brought up by customers, by TA professionals more than ever. And I think part of that is because of what happened, over the last 2 years. There was a flurry of acquisitions last summer that really kind of changed the dynamic on how the programmatic landscape looked in recruitment advertising. So AppCast was acquired by StepStone, which is a German company that owns many, many job boards and a lot of classified properties around the world, not just jobs, but anything else that falls into the classified bucket. ClickIQ was a relatively small programmatic platform that got based out of the UK that got bought by Indeed in the same month. And then TMP, who's the biggest recruitment advertising agency in the space, bought a company called Parengo, which is effectively was like a hybrid of a small platform along with some sort of agency attributes. And then Recruitix, which was a platform / agency, bought KRT, which was an agency. So you really had this, last summer was like, everybody should have been on the beach, just relaxing. If they had known what was going to happen in 2020, they probably would have done that. But really what happens when you start to see acquisitions in any particular industry, what it means is that there's validation, right? This is not a fad, this is real. And I think we saw that through the consumer marketing numbers, and we saw that through acquisitions last year. In addition, you had Jovio pick up some venture capital money. It was about $5 million in February of 2018. And then you had PandoLogic, which has the Pando IQ platform, which came out of the company originally called RealMatch. They rebranded the PandoLogic to be a programmatic player in February of 2018. So you kind of see this like real shift in movement towards let's follow what's happening in consumer advertising. Let's get, if you were an agency, they sometimes bought a platform. If they were a platform, they sometimes bought an agency. So there's really this just kind of mashup of, mashup and urgency related to getting into programmatic for recruitment advertising. So when we look at this kind of Venn, I'm feeling Zen because it was a long weekend, but it's really, there's this Venn diagram where you talk about when you're looking at the marketplace, you should be thinking about, is someone a platform? Are they a media property, meaning are they a job ad network, or are they a job board, or are they an agency, or do they fall somewhere at the intersection of all these? And I think that, a few of these, clearly a few of these acquisitions blend platform and agency together, and a few of these blend platform and media partner together, and just a couple are all three. And I think that that we're just kind of watching that trend. From our perspective, HireClix is a services organization. So we are going to leverage the best available technology that's out in the marketplace to deploy, whatever the platform we feel like is best for the client, we're going to deploy that. And we want that flexibility. We don't want to have, we would rather buy technology, leading technology, and stay on the cutting edge versus being a service company that buys the technology. And, there's oftentimes a lot of challenges with maintaining that technology if your focus is service. So that's just kind of our take on the landscape. As you're talking with folks, you should be asking, are you a platform? Are you a media? Are you an agency? Or are you some mix of all of those? So bouncing over to more of like, and now we understand what programmatic is. Now let's talk about how do we apply it practically to our TA goals and recruiting goals. So I'll pass it over to Cori with the discussion on quality metrics.
Yeah. So as you're thinking about launching a programmatic campaign, I think there's really important things to consider. So just taking a look at historic performance, just digging into if you've run campaigns with Indeed or Snag-a-Job or ZipRecruiter, really understanding previous performance so that you can actually set a baseline for what you want your metrics to look like and what you want that improvement to be. And you can see kind of on the right, just the full funnel of what happens from somebody seeing an ad on Indeed, that's an impression, a job view, to clicking on it, taking action, and selecting that job to learn more or apply, and then making that decision to actually go through the application process. So understanding all of those metrics from a historic perspective with the campaigns that you may have run before is really important to defining what does success look like with programmatic, or where do I want to improve? And I think a really big piece of that too is defining further down the funnel, what do my metrics need to look like from a conversion rate from apply to quality apply to hire? So not just taking that that higher up in the funnel metric of apply volume and cost per apply, but really understanding what you want your cost per quality app or cost per hire to be. And that's going to vary by employer, by client. So it's taking a look at those different stages within your ATS, within your recruitment process, and kind of putting a stake in the ground for saying, all right, this stage is what I would consider a quality candidate, an on-site or a Zoom phone interview at this point, but defining those and really leveraging the ATS to pull that data and get a better handle on those down funnel metrics.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that we've always thought about in more detail than I think our, the more mature agencies that have been in the space, like them is always about getting the advertising out there. I think that for us, it's always been about what are the end results? How do we get to a cost per hire? And I think that one of the things that we do is like we work really closely with our clients on the ATS data, whether we get some sort of automated report out of the system. In a lot of cases, probably about 40 to 50% of our clients, we actually have access to the ATS because we run our own source reports to measure the campaigns. And that way, we don't add an extra burden to the client, that we can actually get to the details, make sure the tracking's done properly, and make sure the ATS data is looking good. And so as we talk about that downstream data, there's just a couple of things to keep in mind here.
Yeah, so I mentioned before, but looking at any advertising metrics without those down funnel numbers is going to be flawed. You really need to understand what those quality stages are to really get a handle on what the return on investment is. And a part of that, like Neil said, is digging into the ATS. So making sure that the data that's flowing into your applicant tracking system is accurate and tracked properly. I think we've seen an improvement from that side of the house over the years, but there's definitely areas of opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I still think like 10 years later, we're still finding clients that are, or prospects and clients that we talk to that still don't feel good about their ATS data. In fact, I was on another agency's site that said, ignore your ATS data. And so that way Sorry, my daughter's sending me text messages. You know, there was literally like something on the site that said just ignore your ATS data because it's frankly so messed up. And we totally disagree with that. We think that your ATS is not perfect, you know, and but for the most part, they have the capability to follow what was the last website that delivered the completed apply. And it's just a matter of taking the time to set it up properly, and that work on the front end, that ability to increase the level of data assurance is going to give you better information to make better decisions. So whatever you do on the front end and however you leverage programmatic from whatever vendor, you've got to make sure that you actually have a commitment all the way through the pipe down through the ATS data. Because it's just, without that, it's, you know, low cost per apply. You know, we love a low cost per apply. You know, it's anybody that can deliver low cost per apply is great, but a lot of times that can create just a lot of volume and more headaches for the recruiting team and create inefficiency if there's not quality coming through. So it's really a balancing act of both.
Yeah, and it allows you to tell the full story too. I think that cost per apply number is not going to give you the full picture into what's actually happening on the other end. How are you actually interviewing candidates and hiring people? So I think that's a really important piece, and just digging into that data is something that we've helped clients with from the beginning, in pulling those reports to really have those metrics available to measure ROI.
Yeah, and what I think is we found is that all the job boards, the media partners, when we actively share that back with those media partners, so we can tell them like, hey, listen, you might be getting a $5 cost per apply, but something's going wrong with the candidates. There's something off about it, and maybe it's our clients' job titles, or maybe it's the targeting that we're doing. But basically, you know, we try and actively share that with the media property because they're committed to the success of the campaigns as much as we are. You know, them getting a bunch of advertising dollars up front for a cheap cost per apply is really not a long-term business model. They really need to contribute to hires. And I think that, you know, 99% of the job boards and job ad networks and media properties that we talk to are completely on board with that. So.
Yeah. And along those lines, I think, so this is a peek into a client case study of one of my clients that came from actually another programmatic vendor. So they were doing programmatic previously, kind of checking that box, and getting their jobs out there to a large job board, like to all the job boards, getting a lot of traffic across all of the jobs for a cheap cost per apply, which is great. Like Neil said, we want low cost per apply, but something as we were digging into the landscape and understanding what was actually happening, doing an audit of their programmatic setup, was they didn't have any tracking across any of their programmatic channels. So when looking at the applicant tracking system data, the applies were completely self-selection. They didn't have automated source tracking, and with the ATS that they had, it was available and pretty easy to implement. And so that visibility into the down funnel metrics that we were just talking about was totally missing. And that's just not something that we can stomach. And again, telling that full story, yeah, you're getting cheap cost per applies, but what's happening? What's the cost per hire and the ROI from the campaigns that you're spending money on?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, what Cori mentioned, you know, when we started talking with this client, it's a major national restaurant chain, and again, we think $60,000 a month is a really significant spend. But you know, we kind of had this like, wait, but I'm doing programmatic. Isn't everything okay? And I think that that's where like we're finding that, okay, it's important to leverage programmatic, but there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And maybe it's not, I shouldn't even say that. Maybe it's not right and wrong. Maybe it's just, this is the first time you try it, and you know, programmatic 2.0 is kind of what we've talked about. And like in many, many cases, we've gone in and audited what's happening. Because like people are like, wait a minute, I'm doing programmatic. They've sold me A, B, and C, and this is all, I see a low cost per apply. So what do you mean? Like, what could you possibly do? And I think that us going in and you know, providing that kind of no cost audit service gives someone the confidence that like, geez, you know, maybe I can do this better. And I think that's something that's worth taking a look at, because if you've checked the box and you're doing programmatic, you still may not be achieving your goals. You may be spending a lot of money and you may see a low cost per apply, but you may not be hitting the business goals. And I think that's really what we found there, is that just there was you know, this kind of like check the box, deep breath, like wash your hands, like we're good. And I think that what we're saying is that it's not that easy, right? If in the consumer marketing world, if it was all about the programmatic platform and you just did that, you signed up for that platform, let it run and put it on cruise control, there wouldn't be any consumer digital agencies anymore. And I think that that's really what we're saying here is you need strategy, guidance, analysis, and optimization in order to get to the right, result, especially when you have such a significant spend like that. So we have a couple tips in here. So we're getting into the how do you prepare yourself for 2021 and beyond. So what's your programmatic 2.0 game plan? Don't be fooled by flashy, low-cost supply numbers from programmatic vendors. Again, it will catch your attention, but I think that you've got to err on the side of caution. You've got to be able to get to the next level of answers beyond that. Well, how do you get there? What sources do you use? Are you a platform? Are you an agency? Are you a media property? All those kinds of things. I mentioned the whole thing about, if it was so curable by just the platform, then, why do consumer agencies still exist? And I think that we're excited about our position. We don't want to have the technology on board. We think that people are experts in building that technology, and we think that we're experts in, leveraging that technology to get the clients the results that they need. I think that, the third one, even at large scale, a lot of people have the idea that, hey, if I have a lot of jobs, I'm going to go to programmatic and that'll just kind of solve all my problems. There's still opportunities for managing the waste or managing the campaigns by geography, by title, revising job titles. There's so many levers that you can pull to make sure you get the most out of the campaign. And the only other thing I would say is that we've found a trend where you really want to make sure that you have the ability to audit all of your spend through a programmatic partner or through an agency. You just want to make sure that you can actually tie it back to what you're actually paying for the job board. Because in some cases, I think that there's between platform fees, between agency commission, between markups. This happened on the consumer agency side where it was literally down to the level of FBI investigations because consumer agencies were marking up media without their clients knowing it. And so you just want to make sure that you reserve the right to audit any of the transactions that run through any of the platforms, programmatic platforms. Anything you want to add to that?
And I think just as part of that, I mentioned before, but at HireClix, we act as an extension of your TA team. So we want to make sure that you're asking those questions and that we're partnering together on figuring out the business needs within the organization and how do we leverage programmatic as part of the strategy to get you to those goals is I think an important thing to mention.
So here's a couple of questions for you to put in your back pocket. We don't have to read them all verbatim, but basically, tracking, each individual publisher is really important. A lot of times people kind of slam everything together and kind of give you one kind of ad, hey, this is my programmatic platform spend, and it's all mashed up together. And I think it's really important that you understand the nuances underneath all of that to figure out if that campaign is made up of 10 or 20 publishers or 5 publishers, which ones are actually bringing you the quality. The ATS integration is really important. If you can make that happen automatically with the programmatic vendor, that's really huge. And then just after that, it's just pricing. Just make sure you're aware of all the different fees that are out there. We have some really detailed do's and don'ts here. Rachel's going to send everybody on the call a link afterwards, so we'll get you guys this, and you can read through those yourself. But we are getting pretty close here, so we want to get to questions that you guys might have. So this is a little bit of again, all of the chaotic advertising and investment channels, far more organized in this particular layout. So with that, we'll bounce over to questions. Rachel, do you want to jump back in and throw us any questions that might have come up during the webinar?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Neil and Cori. That was awesome. The first question we have is, how quick can you tell a job ad is working regarding the impressions, clicks to applications?
Yeah, so I think that the job ads are typically measured by success when it comes to what is the click-through rate. So if you have 1,000 impressions and you get 10 clicks on those 1,000 impressions, that's only a 1% click-through rate. If you get 100 clicks, now you're talking about a 10% click-through rate. So really, that CTR that you might have seen earlier, or click-through rate, is probably one of the most important factors. That means that someone has viewed your job title, has found it engaging, and has clicked through that. So I think that 3 to 6% is kind of average. If you're below 3%, you probably want to rework your job titles. And if you're above 6%, 10% and above, then you're talking about you're in a really good position. I mean, you can always optimize job titles and get better. Even at those higher levels, you should still be experimenting and trying things. When it comes to after the click, when they get to your job description, now you have your apply rate. So that's really a factor of, is the job title I clicked on accurate and true to the job description? And does that compel them to complete the apply process? And so I think that that's the second factor of success. So hopefully that answers the question. Cori, do you want anything else to add to that?
Yeah, and I think just in terms of timing with that, we can usually tell pretty quickly. So when you update the job on your career site, usually we'll have a feed or are scraping the career site into the programmatic platform and then distributing within usually 24 hours maximum, I would say. And so within the first few days, I think we can start to look at those newer jobs and understand actually what's happening and make those recommendations for job title optimization or job description adjustments that you can make.
Yeah, I think the first few days we get an indication. I think by 2 weeks, we have all the data we need to make some final decisions. So if it's something new you're trying, you probably want to, you can start to react a couple days in, but after 2 weeks of data, that's a significant sample size. Yep, very good question. Rachel, any others?
The next question is just a few parts, so just let me know if you need me to repeat any of it. Do you find that companies who acquire programmatic ad automation do so in lieu of driving more organic traffic directly to their career site, or are both seen as valid spend for candidate attraction? And then there's a second question if you want to answer that one first.
As far as that first part goes, I think that people that in general, you should be getting your jobs out to job sites organically, whether you have a programmatic platform or not. So if your jobs are not getting out to Indeed organically, you don't need a programmatic platform for that. That's really just either an ATS, typically an ATS request to make sure your jobs are distributed there for free, and or you can call the publisher directly and get those jobs on there for free. What was the second part of that question, Rachel?
Okay, the second part, does retention, quality of the hire factor into programmatic by circling back with HR employee data pulled into the ATS from the HR record? Sounds like this might be part of your audit service.
Yeah, so I think that's really a future state of, we really want to, if going back to the quality factor, like, do we know, can we track into the ATS where someone came from, right? If we know with a high level of data assurance that we tracked all of our advertising dollars and we can see the candidates as they sit in the ATS, then as they get passed over to the HRIS system, and we can then start to track them through the lifetime of their employee life cycle. And so absolutely, like if we can get the marriage of accurate ATS data with HRIS data, we can start to tell, okay, ZipRecruiter leads to employees that stay for an average of 4 to 6 years, whereas, Facebook only leads to employees that stay 1 to 2 years. So that would absolutely be something we could dig into and analyze and talk with someone about. But that's all that data doesn't flow completely through. We're seeing a big trend in people moving over to Workday. So we think a Workday ATS with a Workday HRIS leads to lots of potential for us to analyze that kind of data. So it's a really good thought and good question.
The next question, do you only work with large enterprise clients, or can you help a company with 60 hires a year and is managing through an RPO?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Our clients range, from really all sizes. We have clients that spend, $10,000 a year, and we have clients that spend $10 million a year. So it really the way we have our service model that we're able to support smaller businesses like that. And I think that, the question would be, does that client do we jump into a programmatic, campaign with that client? It would really depend as we go through and talk with them about it. But, if it's something that we analyze the campaign, look at the historical results, and we make a recommendation to use programmatic, then, even at that scale, it just depends on the types of jobs, the geography they're in, and how competitive it is. So we definitely work with clients like that, and we would, make a kind of game day decision on whether we use programmatic in a campaign like that.
Okay. What about ads on streaming services? People are spending more and more time binging TV through the pandemic. How we see digital media has changed to include TV. Is that a service you'll be adding in the future?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So we're already running pretty significant advertising campaigns on audio streaming services, Spotify, Pandora. Those are campaigns that we're already running. When it comes to connected TV, it's kind of that category that we would put out there. Again, we because of the background coming from the consumer marketing world, we have been keeping an eye on that space, and we think that Hulu probably provides the best possible opportunity for streaming services at this point in time. There's a lot of other options out there. Tubi's an option. There was one that just started and then kind of collapsed. Forgot what that one was called, Quibi or something like that. It was like, so I think it's a little bit of a volatile space. We're actually seeing Comcast. We've done some Comcast advertising buys, and Comcast is now offering more advertising options in their on-demand pool. So I would say it's something we're already doing today. Hulu, I'll give you a benchmark that their minimum spend on Hulu was $50,000 for a campaign. Hulu has announced a self-service platform, kind of like a Google AdWords or Facebook self-service platform, and that would typically come with the reduction in the minimums. So we're waiting to get access to that platform. We're enrolled in the agency side, so as soon as that's available, we'll plan on spending some money on those Hulu campaigns, just in that kind of progressive category. TikTok, all these advertising platforms all start out with big minimums. They all start with 20 grand minimum, 50 grand minimum. That's how Twitter started. That's how Facebook started. And then they slowly, get some data on how the marketplace works, and then they build a tool that allows people to self-service. TikTok a year ago was you had to have a big minimum in order to be an advertiser on TikTok. And over the summer, probably like September timeframe, they launched a self-service platform. So what we do is we actually take our own dollars. We gather a handful of clients. We run TikTok campaigns using our money with their brand. So that way we get the green light from them and they're willing to test it out. But basically we're going to say, like, we'll underwrite the experiment and start to see how TikTok performs for clients in our portfolio. And that way we have low risk ways for our clients to test something out. We get firsthand data on how that channel works. And that's what we've done with TikTok. And now we've activated multiple campaigns with the client investing in that because we've got their dollars. So I think connected TV, like I said, we're already doing some of that on demand for Comcast. We think Hulu's the best option because of the concentration of users and the brands that are out there for connected TV. And I think that as soon as that price point comes down, we'll be activating a test with HireClix dollars for a handful of clients.
Okay,
Cool.
the next
Anything
question.
else?
Yep. Is there a minimum budget that is required in order to start leveraging programmatic?
No. I would say, so there's no minimum. I think what we typically look at is, as Neil mentioned before, just working with the client and understanding what are your targets from a down funnel metric perspective, and do you have some of that historic performance so we can back out to a recommended budget. But I think just in terms, I don't know if you want to add anything. Yeah,
I mean, I think that, if you have $1,000 a month, we probably wouldn't recommend putting it on programmatic. You're just spreading the peanut butter too thin across. If you want to turn on programmatic for 5 publishers for $1,000 a month, are we really is that enough, budget to learn anything? Or do we think we could, split that 2 ways on 2 media budgets, just do it through the advertising channels, prove out a case to get you a good cost per apply, cost per hire, justify more budget. Once it becomes more complex, it needs all those rules and the you know, the automated stopping of campaigns and stopping at apply volume. Like, I think that there's no minimum, but I think there's a practical, you know, component. Now, if someone's like, listen, I really just want to run this through programmatic, absolutely, we're 100% capable of doing that without a minimum.
Okay, we've got one more question. How quickly can HireClix get a campaign up and running on Programmatic Plus?
We're not busy the rest of the afternoon, so we can, no. I mean, it's probably,
I would say within a week. And go ahead.
We've done them in 24 hours, like no doubt about it. But if you're, you know, if we need to, I would say a week is a reasonable project management kind of timeline. But we've turned them on in 24 hours. So again, it's case by case basis, but you know, we'll be as responsive as the client needs. When it comes to switching, you know, if you're on a, you know, old school programmatic campaign and you're looking to move to a programmatic 2.0 type of environment, you know, we're talking about, again, because you've already set things up for a programmatic campaign, that's definitely a 24 to 48 hour thing. It's really that fast. We can flip all the switches and you know, shut it off on one side and turn it on our platform.
All right, that's all the questions that we have today. Thank you everyone for joining us, and keep an eye out. Our next webinar is on multi-touch attribution.
Yep, thanks so much. And feel free to connect with Cori and I on LinkedIn. Thank you, Rachel, for all of your help. And again, we appreciate all the time today. So all the best.
Thank you, guys.
Stay well.